The following scenario poses real-world challenges that you may face in the field as a leader. As you listen to the details, make sure you ask yourself, as an NCO-IC team leader of this RRNCO, how would I counsel this soldier? Sergeant First Class Palmer has been in the Army National Guard for a total of 12 years. The first 8 years, he was an infantryman, 11 Bravo, to include 2 deployments to the Middle East. The past 4 years, he's been a recruiting and retention NCO. He married Susan 8 years ago, and they have 1 daughter, April, age 6. He has been very successful in recruiting, making mission all 4 years, and number 2 currently in the state with 26 enlistments. During the last physical year, Sergeant First Class Palmer enlisted a friend of the family's son, Private First Class Gray. Sergeant First Class Palmer has known PFC Gray for over 10 years and watched him grow up. Sergeant First Class Palmer was his baseball coach when Private First Class Gray was much younger. PFC Gray was a stellar student in high school but needed assistance to go to college. He decided he wanted to follow Sergeant First Class Palmer's path and become an infantryman himself and use the educational benefits the National Guard had to offer. After PFC Gray returned from basic and AIT, he found out his unit would be deploying in a few months. PFC Gray decided this would be a great time to marry his high school sweetheart and provide for her while he was gone. Since the deployment was quickly approaching, PFC Gray and his girlfriend decided to get married at the courthouse and have an official ceremony when he returns from deployment. One day, Sergeant First Class Palmer received a phone call from his old readiness NCO, Sergeant First Class Johnson, with some disturbing news. During a convoy operation, Specialist Gray was killed by an IED. Sergeant First Class Johnson did not have many details, but he wanted to let Sergeant First Class Palmer know because of the closeness between the families. After the funeral, Sergeant First Class Palmer felt responsible for Specialist Gray's death. When he was at home, it was a constant reminder of Specialist Gray and his wife and the family they could have had. Susan suggested that Sergeant First Class Palmer should turn to someone for help, but Sergeant First Class Palmer refused. Sergeant First Class Palmer began to spend more time at the office to avoid the conflict at home and the constant reminder of Specialist Gray's death. Sergeant First Class Palmer's production decreased because of his attitude, and his approach was talking more people out of joining the Guard. Sergeant First Class Palmer received separation paperwork from his wife's attorney, realizing his marriage was over. Sergeant First Class Palmer still has issues with Specialist Gray's death and the impact it has had on his life. What would you do as Sergeant First Class Palmer's NCO-IC?